All right, so this is the Drupal usability meeting for January 17th, 2017. And we have several interesting agenda items from media entity UX through workspaces, entity types for content workflows, and inline form errors, blockers. So I think let's start with media entity, since that was the biggest of all of them and the most time pressing, maybe.
Okay. So do all of you have the link to comment 200 in that issue? It's Angie pasted it as the first link in the sidebar chat.
So our issue is 283124 because sidebar chats are not recorded by Google Hangouts. So it's 283124. That's the node number.
Yep. And then comment number 200.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll walk through it because it's a lot of text there, so to save time on reading it. So the background behind this is if we want to get the media module, essentially what is currently the contrib media entity module into core, sort of renamed as the media module, but with roughly the same kind of functionality and architecture. The challenge is, we can potentially get that into 8.3, but not much else. So within the contrib space, a typical distribution will include the media entity module along with a lot of other helper modules, like the media library and WYSIWYG integration and remote video handling, and all of these are sort of separate pieces. But the challenge is if we include it in core and all we include is the media module, how to make it, have a UI that sort of stands on its own. And that could be made better with contrib, but that isn't completely confusing if all you have is that it does something. So what I sort of pointed out is that I think it actually does solve a use case, which is the ability to have files that can be reused, right? So if you think of like a school, maybe a school website where one person in the school is able to upload, say, PDF documents containing admissions forms, and maybe someone else is able to create and edit nodes that ought to be able to link to those admissions forms, but the person creating and editing those pages shouldn't be able to control the files that correspond to the admissions forms. That needs to be controlled by whoever is actually responsible for those PDF files. And so the media module actually provides, there's many other use cases, but that's like an example of one use case where it's useful to sort of have a separation of concerns between uploading a file and keeping it updated, right? So like if someone discovered that there's a bug within the PDF file or some new admissions requirements is there, that they can keep it updated by like re-uploading a new file to that media entity. And meanwhile, all of the nodes that are on the site can reference a particular media entity and automatically sort of be updated as the media entity itself is updated by the person who has the authority to do that. And obviously, if you add on all the other contrib ecosystem modules to let media do more than just that use case, then that's great. But at least in core, potentially, we could have even just that one use case solved in a pretty nice way. So then the screenshots are sort of some of the questions that I have around it. I actually want to maybe skip the first two and go down to the third one, which is sort of the meatiest one, and maybe come back to the earlier ones if there's time. But the one for this team that I really want to get to is the add field screenshot, which is the third in that comment. So right now, that's the UI that's presented. Right, I want to add a field, and at this point, I'm going to decide. So to wherever I'm adding a field, let's say I'm doing it to the article content type, which is what the screenshot here is. And so I'm giving a list of field types that I can choose from, and within the reference section, I now have file, image, and media. Right, file and image obviously is what's in core already. Media is what's being proposed in this patch. And the UX thing that I'm concerned about is how would someone know whether they want to choose file or media at this point? The difference between the two is pretty subtle. The difference is that file doesn't really act like a real reference in the way that you would think of as a content modeling standpoint, because if you add a file field to your content type, it lets you upload a file only to that piece of content, and then you can't reuse that file anywhere else. So you're not referencing something that you've previously uploaded, and you're not uploading something that can be meaningfully referenced anywhere else. So whereas the difference with media is media actually is you can select from something that is that's been uploaded already before. So I thought of a couple of suggestions for how we could fix this particular screen, and my recommendation is to just move file and also image, but most importantly file, from the reference section to the general section. And then I gave some other suggestions, and people have commented on that, but I was curious from this team if there's any thoughts on just doing that.
Can we just take them out?
No, because if all you install is media module and you haven't installed some of the things that won't make it into core quite yet, and probably won't make it into core until 8.4, if then, are the sort of various other like widgets and formatters that completely make file and image sort of no longer useful. Like that is the goal of media, is to eventually completely supersede file and image. But in the module as written, it doesn't quite do that yet. So there's still, the file field is still really useful in terms of, letting you upload a file right there at the point that you're creating content. Whereas in the case of media, there's a different page on which you can upload something to within a media entity, and then within your content, you're only able to reference something that's already been uploaded previously.
Yeah,
so,
I see. So in that case, I think your instinct is correct. You could just put them in general, but also it should be media item, media-item, not just media.
Okay, would that be media item everywhere, like media space item, I'm guessing, like the way taxonomy term is?
Yeah, I think, yes, that's right. Media item. That's already, I think, being implemented in other places in the module.
Oh, I see. Okay.
There was a discussion about it in another issue.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the media item question got raised above, and there were some possibly conflicting answers. So like Yori said, to leave out item in the human-facing labels, please. Of course, to use media item where without item the wording becomes awkward, which is it's not a rule that foreign speakers can apply. Is this awkward or not?
Yeah, I'm going to have to disagree with Roy on this one, and a lot of other people weighed in on this. And it's not broadly known, or I think it's not broadly understood by everybody, that media is a plural, on its own. Medium is the singular. So it should be a media item.
What about Alex's suggestion of reusable media? I like that because it talks about exactly what it is.
Yeah. I want to set it as well. What is the big distinction between an image file and media? It's reusable. Yeah.
I thought if we left file in the reference section, which actually does, I think even regardless of the media module, file ought to be moved out of the reference section. But if we thought that was, if there were reasons for it being in the reference section that are still valid and we wanted to keep it there, that's when I think it's important to clarify, to add the reusable prefix. If we move file out, then everything that's in the reference section is something that's reusable. That's kind of implied by the word reference.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
so
I was going to say the same thing.
Yeah, if we move file and image out, where are we moving them to?
To general.
General.
Yeah, so if I'm a first-time user, I would start from the top. Okay, what do I need? And then I see image. Yeah, I want to have an image or a file. Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's still not a really clear distinction, but
Yeah, I mean, I have all kinds of issues with this dropdown anyway, because people do exactly what you just said. And so like we used to have Boolean at the top of this list. I don't actually know why it's not at the top of the list, because alphabetically it's first. And so we were doing a usability test on this screen, and somebody was like, oh, Boolean, I don't know what that is, but it's first in the list, so it must be important, and went off to Google to like figure out what Boolean was. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, we can move it to general. I guess that's the least controversial thing to do. The reason those are in reference, yeah, I think you're right, Alex. I think the reason those are in reference, I'd have to go back and look at the issues again, but I think it's because technically it is storing a reference in the database, but from a normal end user point of view, I think you're right. They don't work the way user taxonomy and other types of reference fields here work. So
yeah, you could have a widget that reuses files and images, right? But we don't have such a widget in core. But that could be possible. The reason we are solving that problem with media instead of solving that problem with file and image is because media is a more general container that could have YouTube videos and tweets and all kinds of other things. And we don't need to resolve the same problem for one by one everything, but we can resolve the problem in a more general way. And then we can have a media browser that may have tweets and YouTube videos and local images in there, and you can use whatever fits your content at the moment instead of having separate things.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then it sounds like the most straightforward thing is to do, could you scroll down one little bit more? Yeah, okay, so the first suggestion.
Could someone repeat why we couldn't remove image and file from this list? I would say if somebody enables the media module, then maybe we can remove it. And if it's not enabled, then we show file and image. Is that not possible?
I think we eventually want to remove them or at least discourage the use of them. But for one, media entities themselves need a way to store the file and the image, right? So they need to have an image and a file field. So media entities do need this feature, even if other entities don't need the feature. And the other reason is that the current proposal is to have file media items supported, but not image media items yet in 8.3, so that it would not be yet supported with media.
Yeah, and also with what can make it into 8.3 core, it would be like, for example, the node article. I mean the article image field that's part of standard profile. That's really convenient because you can, as you're editing the article, you can upload. If you're creating a new article, you can upload a brand new image, through a file select.
Yeah.
Or you can, if you're editing the article, you can click remove and upload a different image. So if it's an image that you're not reusing, right, which is kind of what all images are in sort of standard profile, then it's kind of nice that the widget lets you kind of manage it all right there. Whereas with the media module currently, if it's just this issues patch, you would, if you sort of said, oh, we no longer have image fields, we have, it has to be a media field, the UI for it isn't that clean yet. There's other things that we hope to make it into 8.4 or that you can enable through contrib that would provide a really clean UI to even handle the sort of article case. But for now, since the UI is really geared towards selecting something that's already been uploaded elsewhere, rather than sort of giving you a UI where you can either select something that's been uploaded elsewhere or add a new one. I think that's kind of the big distinction here is why it's useful to leave both file and image around just in the non-reference portion. And then that way it's clear if you want something that you want to treat as a reference, then click the thing that's in the reference section. If you want something that you don't need to treat as a reference, then use the one that's in the general section.
Okay, thank you. Just thinking out of the box, and if we prefix it with the word simple, then people think on, hey, this is simple. So there is something more advanced. So if you say simple file, simple image, just thinking out of the box, just, I don't know.
So I think because we are storing them as references, the actual user experience largely depends on the widget and the formatter.
Yeah.
So contribs could actually change how simple they are or whether they are reusable or not. So this is what's being proposed is purely how core implements it, and may or may not be true depending on what you have installed in your site, in which case those modules may need to be changed to move it back to reference or something.
Yeah, I think that the proposal is the best one. Just keep it file, keep it image, move them to general, and have media. And I would defer the media item question to the, because it's a global question. It's a question, should it be media item everywhere? And I thought we had resolved it, but apparently not.
Okay, can we scroll down to the next screenshot then?
Anyone else object to that, or is everybody okay with that?
So once again, the consensus there was moving file and image back to general and leaving media undisturbed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable, at least as, I mean, once again, this is going, you know, we can make changes to this afterwards, but I think as an initial stab, I think that's a really reasonable approach.
Mm-hmm.
So in the next screenshot, that's what happens if you click on other. On the previous screenshot, one of the choices in the reference section is other. So if you click on other, this is the screen you get. And so again, file and media. So now you've already clicked something in the reference section, but it's because there are things that are here that aren't in that first list, just because there's things that are sort of more edge casey. Like, for example, right, custom menu link and custom block and shortcut link. None of those are in the first place. So if you want to make references to those, you kind of have to go to other. But on this other screen, we also see file and media. And so I think it's related to the previous proposal, but it's sort of a separate question. My suggestion is to just remove file from this list, right? Essentially, just like on the previous screen, if we moved file away from the reference section, then if you click on other, it shouldn't be one of the choices here either.
Right. Nothing that's already on the other screen needs to be here at all.
So currently this lists things that are on the other screen, like user taxonomy term and content and stuff. And it does, for some reason, it does not list image, which is interesting.
Yep. Any objections to removing file from here? I think it goes hand in hand with the previous one. I mean, not implementationally. Implementationally, they're actually two different things. But I think in terms of making a cohesive UX, if we remove it from the other screen, it makes sense to remove it from here as well.
This one's a little trickier because there are only two headings. There's only content and configuration. And it doesn't make sense under configuration.
No, that's what I'm saying. It shouldn't be here at all, because you only got to the screen by choosing other from within the reference section. So this only shows you things that you can reference. And
so what
I'm suggesting is that file is not something that you can meaningfully reference, even though you can technically reference it. It is an entity type. It has a database table. You can reference it, but actually doing so doesn't really make content modeling sense. And in fact, the implementation is broken. For example, if I can go into more details, but maybe that's too detailed. Go ahead, Gabor.
So you propose we remove it if media is enabled, or we remove it entirely?
That's a good question. I propose we remove it. I propose that we at least remove it if media is enabled. I would also propose that we remove it entirely because of the fact that it's actually broken in core. Like, if you choose it and you start creating references to files, using the entity reference select widget, you now have references to files that aren't properly tracked, which means if you delete the node that the file was originally uploaded to, the file goes away with it, because files aren't implemented as things that were thought of as things that you could reference nicely. And so now you've basically have, so yes, you were, by clicking file here, you were able to create a site where you created entity reference fields to file entities, but you're then left with a broken implementation of them. And so, which you could argue maybe isn't entirely broken, right? You could say that for sites that really want that, they discover this quirk, and then they just know, like, okay, if I'm using that, then I should never delete the node that I originally uploaded the file to.
No, that's broken. That's an experience that's broken, because what's going to happen is that somebody is going to delete the node that had the image in it, and then the other node that also has the image in it has a broken image link. That's broken. That could be the banner on your site, on your homepage, that now has a broken image link.
Yeah, I don't think it shows up as a broken image link. I think it would show up, like the image just wouldn't show up at all. It would be gone.
Which is worse, because at least with a broken image link, you know what's wrong is that the image is not there.
Are entities that are referenced blocking deletion blocked for deletion because they are referenced?
But the difference is here, what you're referencing is the file. Like, yeah, so if you have a node reference, like if you have a node reference, a content, one node referencing another node, and you delete, so node A references node B, you delete node B. So now when you visit node A, right, it's no longer linking to node B because of that,
well, it has a broken link still.
Or it has, yeah. But I think the difference in this case though is by referencing a file, when you wouldn't expect that deleting the node that you uploaded the file to would delete a file that's still being referenced in other places, right? I think that's the part that's broken, is you're not directly deleting the thing that you referenced, you're deleting just one of the other things that was referencing it. And through that, you got an implicit deletion of other things that were referencing it.
Yeah.
So I think this one is a clear yes, also take it out.
One question I have is these decisions that we're making, which is fine. Are we blocking this patch on those things being done, or are we filing those as must-have follow-ups that we do sometime before we hit RC?
From an implementation standpoint, I think it's fine for them to be follow-ups.
Yeah, I think that's a release manager question. Is it?
Okay.
Okay, let's see. Then if you, okay, so yeah, okay, if you scroll down a little further, and I don't know, is it? Yeah. So the other thing that this patch, right, because there's a separate issue for the media library, right? So that if you installed the media library, then you would this screen, which shows your admin content page, so you've got your content, comments, and files tab. The media library issue, which is a different issue, and I believe a different module. If you enable that, then you get a media tab here with some really spiffy stuff, a grid view and various things you can drill down via. But what I'm suggesting in this comment is that if you install the media module and do not install the media library module, because maybe the media library module isn't even in core for 8.3, or maybe it's in core but as experimental, then it seems like even if all you did was install the media module alone, you still ought to have some way of knowing what media you have on your site. And so I'm suggesting that a blocker for releasing the media module, again, maybe it could be done as a follow-up, but I wouldn't want to release core where if all you did was install the media module and did not install the media library module, that you have no mechanism by which to see which media is on your site. So I'm proposing that we need, like, part of media module needs to be, even if it's just a very simple listing, but something, like a list view, just like the files tab, just to let you know, here's the list of media that you have.
Right, but that's not the only option. The other option would be to add the media to the files tab. Add the media into the files view, just change the view so that it shows media and files. And then just somehow flag the media as different.
Right, that's harder implementationally, but yeah, but you're right, that's worth putting on the table from a UX standpoint.
Because we run into the issue of, if now I have the media is adding the tab for media, and then somebody adds the media module the contrib media module in the 8.3 cycle. That also, the contrib media library module that also adds a media tab. Now I have media.
Oh, but I think the media library module could then, you know, disable the media modules view, and then it just takes over that tab.
Okay, yeah, I think that's good. Does anybody else see value in having the media and the files, you know, put together in the same view?
I think that's closer to what most content editors would expect if they're looking at this page.
Yeah, I think it's a hard problem, but it's like, say you only have the file handler for media, then the files tab and the media tab will show exactly the same thing, because the only thing you can reference is files in media. So they'll list, I mean, it effectively, it's a wrapper around each file, but ultimately it will be the same files in both tabs.
Right.
The media tab would actually show you less. The files tab would show you all the files that are on the system, which would include files that you uploaded through a file or image field.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
The media tab would only show you explicit media entities that you created from a UI that lets you create them, which potentially might only be an add media button on that medias tab.
Yeah.
Right. And then what happens with the file and the file entity from media? Do you see them both side by side? Like the file and the file that the media entity is referencing are just sitting there next to each other? Which is even more confusing.
So for example, let's say you installed standard profile, right? So you made some articles and used the image field as part of your article content type to upload some images. And then you also had media that you created through, let's say you went to this media tab. And so initially it was empty because there's no media that you created through the media tab, but then you click on add media within that tab. So now you've made something, and let's say as part of that, you uploaded some PDF file. So then on the Files tab, you would now have your images and your PDF file. And on the Media tab, you would just have the media entity that corresponds to the PDF file.
Right. But what I'm saying is if we were to combine them and just put the media entities into the files view, would we see the file and also the media file?
Yeah, so I'm not aware of any way that a view could display both files and media entities as sort of rows within the view. So basically as like equivalent rows. So like, I don't think there's any way that we could have a row for your file and then a separate row for your media, sort of all interspersed in the same view. I think the way we would have to do it is either make it two different views that are just both on the same tab. So you'd have like, your list of files, and then below that, your list of media. Or maybe there'd be some way to combine them into one view, like what you would list as the files, and then for the ones that have a media entity to go with them, somehow display that on that row, like have something within that row that says, oh, not only is this a file, but it also has a media entity.
I think, Emily, what do you, I mean, you made the very good point that, this is going to be confusing for content editors to have two different tabs. What do you think of the idea of having two different views on the same page? I think it could be good, particularly if they're in collapsible field sets.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, especially if there's a different way of adding those different sections, then it'd be good to delineate those so that people know how they're separated, so they know they added this in a certain way, and so it's appearing in one section.
Or they could be secondary tabs also. In other words, you could see that the top one we could change to files and media, one tab, and then underneath it you could have two secondary tabs, files and media.
That might be more consistent with with elsewhere in core. Like I can't think of another place we put big, huge honking tables with 50 plus items, one on top of each other.
Yeah.
Which is
I think we also should think about the default case. What will people use most if they've enabled media, and we want to prevent them from clicking a lot of times to get to their content? I think one tab is then okay, and then maybe default to the media one.
Yeah, I don't know if I think I'd still call the tab. Yeah, I don't know. That's weird. I mean, so what we're talking about then is if media is not enabled, this just says files. You click on it, you get a list of files. If media is enabled, the tab name is files and media, and then media probably is the first tab, and then files moves to the second tab.
That's what I would say. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's going to be a big disruption to current sites. All of a sudden, where they used to see all their files, they're immediately going to be gone.
I know, and that's why I'm kind of on the fence. It's almost like we need to count the number of records, and then based on which one has the biggest count, flip the order. It's like do that. So, I mean, I'm sure you could do that, but that would be horrible.
So Microsoft had these changing menus based on usage patterns. It's a nightmare.
Yeah.
Yeah. Still, I would defer to, because if you went and if you've enabled the media entity, you made a conscious decision to do that. That's the thing you're going to want to see if you're the site owner, the site editor. So, even if it is an existing site and it has many more files than media, you enabled media for a purpose.
Yeah, we're going to be in a really awkward state for existing sites, that's for sure. I think, though, for a lot of this stuff, we just need to pick what we think is the best option, get it out there, and then as soon as 8.3 ships, we're going to get all kinds of actual feedback from actual users, and I think we'll be able to make a second stab at this that's a lot more informed.
Right.
But I'm gonna get a lot of questions, I know, even from developers. Yeah.
It's changeable through configuration anyway, also.
Yeah.
Those tabs, you can, you can change, the site owner can go in and make the files the primary.
Well, no, if we change it to files and media, then we need to write code to make that happen. It's not going to be config. Or we need to change our config under U, which is so far we never done that with installing new modules, because your config is supposed to be your thing, and when you enable modules, they're not supposed to change your config because you've set up your config the way you want it for it to be. So,
I mean, if we added the new media tab, then maybe under the existing files, we have we add an explanation about the media tab, like, linking to it, maybe on each one.
Here's a thought. We go back to that reusable media idea. So we leave the files tab alone. We call it files. And then we call the reusable media, or we call the media tab the reusable media tab. Maybe, just to make it so they're not direct synonyms of one another. It's just going to be way more straightforward if they're two separate tabs and not linked in any way. Because then ideally what happens is, there's some module, maybe a core update function that migrates all your files to media entities when that's stable and all good to go and copacetic, and then files does nothing and you disable the file module. And so we want to make that as easy as possible, I think, in the 1+ year out plan.
And media relies on files, right?
Yeah, you can't disable. Well,
yeah, but we don't need to expose a UI for it necessarily.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, maybe we should just go for the simplest, which is the thing that was suggested first. Just add media, just add a tab media, and that's it.
Okay. And labeled media, or do you like Angie's suggestion of here? Not necessarily labeling it reusable media everywhere, but as far as the tab label, whether to call it reusable media.
I don't know that really adds value, though. I mean, and it also is more verbose. The fewer words, the better. When in doubt, always go with fewer words.
Well,
all right, so it's just, I know Emily's first statement is completely bang on. People are going to they're not going to know what the difference between those two are at all.
But again, like I said before, somebody enabled this module on purpose for a reason, so they know that they're doing it.
Yeah. No, the site builder enabled it on purpose, but the person going to this page is not the site builder.
Yeah.
The person going to this page is the content author who doesn't know even what a module is, and is going to be totally confused about why there's two tabs that show almost the same thing, but one has a lot of items and the other one doesn't.
The nice thing about reusable media is it might hint to them that when they go there, there's going to be an action item to add. Yeah. Whereas if they're familiar with files, I actually was trying to load it up and my site's broken. If you go to files, there is no action item to add. So you might assume that if you saw a tab for media, there's not going to be a action item to add. So if you just installed it, you might think, well, I don't have any media yet, so I'm not going to click there. But if you say reusable, it might give you the idea that this is a place you can upload stuff or, you know, YouTube video or whatever that you can then reuse somewhere else. Without that, people might not even go to the tab because they'll assume there's nothing there because they know they haven't added anything yet.
What were you going to say, Emily?
I was going to say I'm not sure if reusable will really clarify things for people. That would be a good thing to ask some content editors, because I'm not sure how much that helps.
Yeah, I didn't mean that as being the silver bullet, but more like like adjective media or something. It's just like to give people a clue on why they'd click one over the other. But I don't have any great ideas. So to move forward here, though, I feel like we can keep two separate tabs, one files, one media. The relabeling of that tab, if that's what we choose to do, that can happen all the way up until RC. And if we don't get to it, then it's no worse, I think, than the current contrib situation, which is if you have media enabled or media entity enabled along with file field, you'll get this confusing situation already. Is that correct?
I know that the media library patch adds a tab here called media, and that's where your media library is. I don't know where what contrib is currently doing. You know, that's something we could find out, but I don't know offhand.
I'm guessing, though, it's not going to be any worse than what the status quo is in contrib. So.
Should we move on to the next screenshot? Because I'm really sorry for taking up so much of your time.
Yeah, no, go ahead. But this is important, though, and you know, this is a big thing. We also have the other meeting that we can cover other agenda items.
Okay. So on the next screenshot, this will hopefully be a quick decision point, but it's related to the last one, which is, right, because this module, unless you install a bunch of other contrib modules that make this module cover more use cases, but if all you do is install this module on its own, you know, it covers a relatively small use case. I think an add media link in the tools menu as like the only other link that's there in addition to add content is just sort of like giving it more prominence than makes sense. And so I think especially if we have a media tab on the previous screen, it seems to me like, you know, the add media button there is sort of enough for people who want to add media, and that we don't need to also make it such a prominent choice, you know, essentially, you know, on the front end of people's site.
I agree, but not for the same reason. Well, I agree because why would I add media from here? Why would I? There's no reason. You're adding media in the context of doing something else. You're adding media in the context of creating a node. You're adding media in the context of creating a landing page. You're not adding media in the context of just being on a page. It's not something that, it doesn't make sense in any workflow. So it shouldn't be there.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think having it at the top of the view totally makes sense because there's other places where it's like, here's a view of things. Because otherwise it's like you create a media and then you're done. Where do you end up after that?
Yeah.
Like, I have no idea. I'd be like, add a media, and then you get like a file with an upload field and you save, and then it redirects you back to the home page, and then you're like, where the fuck is the thing I just made? Whereas if you created it from the view, then you'd see it immediately underneath it in the table.
Cool. Actually, can we go back to the remaining screenshots are just sort of showing that the default, essentially the entity reference widget and the entity reference formatters are, sufficient to cover a simple use case. But can we go back to the screenshot where, let's see, the second one in the comment? So yeah, yes, that one. Sorry, yes, this one. So this just basically shows that, so one of the things you have to be able to do is you need to be able to make media types, right? You enable the media module, and then, well, potentially if all you've done is enable the media module and all you can have is a file type, then that's all you need to make. And that maybe that's even already pre-made as part of standard profile. But, let's say you did enable, like a YouTube module or, like a remote video module, then you might want to make a media type for your remote videos. And for more advanced use cases, you might want to divide your types more granularly. Like maybe you want to have photos as one type of media versus illustrations as a separate type of media, because maybe you want to have a license field for photos, but you don't need a license field for illustrations, or, whatever the use case of your site is.
Right.
So my question, though, is should the media type creation process, is that part of structure in the same way that, say, comment types and taxonomy is? Or should it be moved down to configuration? Because within configuration, we actually do have a media section. So there is configuration media, which is where you can create your image styles and where you can decide, where your files go and things like that. And so the reason I'm asking is during the contrib space of media, it's actually gone back and forth. Basically some people argue that it should be in configuration and some people argue that it should be in structure. And there's reason, you can come up with reasons for both, but we've never had to make that call for core. And so I figure that probably needs, a UX decision rather than just sort of, I guess we could just pick one and then change it later if we decide it needs to be changed. But it seems, it actually does seem relevant in terms of, again, like reinforcing to people how they even think of what media types mean. And the main thing that media types mean is your ability to, define what is the purpose of this type of media in the same way that node types are. And then also what ancillary fields do you want on there, like a license field or tags or, things like that.
It absolutely belongs in structure. I can't imagine why anyone would want to put it in configuration.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think it totally belongs in structure.
Well, I would love all of that stuff moved out of structure, and leave structure just content types and get rid of display modes and these kinds of things. But given that structure is now a clearinghouse for any random ass thing that sort of is like content, then it does belong in structure.
Well, yeah, there's an open issue to give it more hierarchy, but we just haven't been able to get that thing to land.
Yeah.
But you're right, that display modes needs to be a subset of content types, et cetera. Comment types does as well. You don't have a comment where it's not a comment on another node.
People get so confused about, anyway, this is so it's making that problem slightly worse, but at least media types is pretty distinct from anything else in that list, so it doesn't make it remarkably worse.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'll point out that people is under configuration, right? So if you want to add fields to user entities, right? So you want to have you want to mimic user profile, what user profile module used to do by adding fields to your user entities, that's done in configuration. But I can also understand that that's an edgier, or a much narrower use case than media types, and because media types are a more prominent kind of content, that they belong in structure.
Well, how I like to think about this distinction is configuration is stuff that you generally go in and you set up one time and then you're done and you don't ever go back there again. Like you're only ever going to set your preferred date time format once and then you're done. Versus stuff in structure are things that you'll go back to repeatedly throughout the life of your site and set things up again. So for example, block layout, you're going to go back to that screen a lot every time you enable a module, whenever there's a new marketing campaign, this kind of thing. Views in a similar way. Anytime you create content types or this kind of thing, you're gonna, and the nature of your site's going to change over time. Media types, to me, does actually feel like the kind of thing where you need, however many of those you need, and you set them up once and then you're done. Is that correct?
I think it really varies by site.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. Because, for example, if you're not adding fields to them, then I think that's true, right? Like you set up your file type and maybe you set up your remote video type and that's it, then you're done. But if you've got a site where you want to set up sort of outsourced photography and it needs a license field, and then you want to set up screenshots and that needs a tags field, and then you want to set up whatever real estate drawings or whatever architecture drawings. It's like depending on the kind of site you have, it's something you might be coming back to as often as you come back to content types.
Or imagine you had once for every social media type, like if you had Twitter, Snapchat, Tweet, those kind of things. A new social media platform comes along and you need to add a type for it. It's something that sort of falls in between the two, I think, Angie. It's something that you're going to change it, every couple of months, possibly. And it's not like set it and forget it.
Images, videos, tweets, done. What else am I ever going to need?
So then, somebody, like my manager says, well, I also want to have a category for Snapchat. I also want to have a category for some new kind of media comes along, and they're like, we need to add that. Or so I want to separate out videos from YouTube
kind of thing, but not like a once every month kind of thing.
Yeah. But to me, that distinction is less important than the distinction of than the classification that allows the person to find it in the right tab, because the person is thinking, well, the structure is a place where I add new types of things, right, and then configure them with fields. So that the ontological kind of nature of what the stuff is in there is going to lead me to think that that's the place where I would go to find it.
Okay. I don't feel super strongly about it, so I'm happy to put it there, I guess. It doesn't make the existing situation much worse. So,
I have another comment, which is not about what your question was here, but I think is equally, if not more important, which is, is there not going to be any default? I see. So is file?
I believe the default is the default that's currently proposed in the patch is file, as shown in the screenshot. I think there might have been in the contrib space. This was actually called document, and I think there's potentially compelling reasons if we are going to create a default as part of standard profile to call it document rather than file. But maybe there's also reasons for calling it file. I don't know.
I just noticed that yeah, okay, so that there is a default there. Yeah, I think that that's okay. We should have a default. If there's default file, why is there no default media handle?
Sorry?
If there's default file, why is there no default media handler? This question above.
Because the rest of the patch has the thing applied, so that file shows up.
Yeah, so the first screenshot was just pointing out that the patch that's on this issue is missing another patch, and then all the other screenshots are with that other patch applied. In other words, once this is released, there will be file as a handler that's choosable in that first screenshot.
Oh, okay.
You just currently in the core queue, you just have to find another patch to get to it.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. I'm really sorry it took the whole hour. I can stay on longer, but either for this topic or for whatever other topic people want to stay on for. But
do you have what you need, Alex? And are you able to transcribe this into the issue?
Yes.
Great. Okay. Awesome. The only other one that was super time sensitive was Daniel's. So Daniel, are you still here?
I am.
So one question I'd have is, are you able to join the call that's approximately 11 hours from now, or is that in a weird time zone for you?
This is tomorrow morning for me. That's 9, I think, for me.
Yeah, it is.
I have another call at 9, so maybe I can join a bit later.
Can we do this now, though? If some
I think
people
it's I can
stay
do it
for-
really quickly. I didn't really.
I'm happy to stay on personally, but if other people need to go, that's okay. And then
I can stay.
but real quick, Joseph, are you able to join the call that's in approximately 11 hours?
Yes, I can be there.
Okay, great. So let's postpone the workflow one until then. And then Kevin, since your issue about the outside-in styling is not particularly time sensitive, because we can commit that anytime, why don't we postpone that one till next week? Because I'm assuming you're not going to be up at 3 in the morning and doing a call with the media team. Does that work?
That is fine.
Okay, great. So we only got one more agenda item then in that case, and that's Daniel. So go for it. And then if people have to drop off, go for it. We'll leave the recording going.
So this is about issue 77245, a place for JavaScript status messages. This has been an issue since 2006, when yes, somehow it got on the roadmap for inline form errors. Originally, the reporter said, okay, we have nice error messages in Drupal, and if I do something with Ajax or JavaScript, I want to be able to put messages on a certain spot so that we have something standard in Drupal that people, well, know where to look for. And for inline form errors, this became a bit important when we tested, for example, the image upload or any other Ajaxified field. Can you see my screen, by the way?
Yep.
Okay, so for example, here I uploaded an image, and I didn't really upload an image, but a Drupal testing txt, and then you see there's one error has been found on the page. This is a summary, and normally when we have an error on the page, we have the summary on the top. See, here we have an error, and when I would then do something crazy and try to upload something else, then we have two summaries, and we said at one time, okay, then we actually need to put this summary on top if something with Ajax happens, or update the existing one, something like that. And then the question popped up again, well, hey, do we have a standardized place for that? So then this became active again, and the proposed solution was to just always render the message div, so that yeah, you can just place messages in a consistent region or update that region. So that became a blocker for yeah, for making the image widget really fancy for with inline form errors. And along the way, this became a very big conversation about what do we need. We need some kind of pop-ups, toasts for visibility. And I was thinking, what do you guys think about this? Should we just go for the simple solution first? That's what I proposed. Let's get just this div in, then we can, well, start out there. And if there are modules in Contrib who want to make nice toasts out of them, they can. But yeah, this is about it. I still think after fixing a lot of issues that it's not really a blocker anymore. Now XCM made it, I think, let me see, I should have of this issue. Let me go to this. Yes, she made a should have of it because it blocks improving inline form errors for file uploads fields. But actually, when you see this page, I think it's workable right now. It's not really crazy.
I don't see anything particularly wrong with it. I'm not sure if I understand the problem exactly. Is the problem that an error is scrolled off the screen because it's at the top?
Yeah, because in case you have, for example, two errors like this, normally you always have one summary of all errors on the page. And if something happens with Ajax and in that form you submitted, well, it's not really a subform, but part of the form, there's also no error, you will have a secondary summary. Actually, I don't think it's a real problem because you are working here and you see the summary right at the place where you're working. So I think that's helpful. But I think in the original issue, we had really strange output. Yeah, we had output like this. Oh, sorry that I highlighted that. This value should not be null, and then one error was found and that was not put inside. But yesterday I fixed something and it already looks really bit better. And this is the file save upload into form state. So if that gets in, then it looks like this, what you already saw also in the demo I just gave. This is one, sorry, this is the one without inline form errors enabled, but you get the gist. Then this other error is not in there. No, this value should not be null. Then this error is below the element, and you see just one error has been found. So that's what you use here in my test site. So I think, well, it's stable enough. Maybe we can just say it's less important. It's not a blocker anymore. But
I think it's usable in the way that it is currently.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like the other issue maybe would even be going a step away from that, if I'm understanding it right, which is that what the other issue, the place for JavaScript messages, I might be wrong, but my interpretation of it is that it's suggesting that that place be at the top. And that therefore what we currently see as the error being given to you right above the field, as it actually being, above your scroll viewport.
Yeah, actually the error message here is split up in two parts, right? So you have to the error, it's below the field, and that's what inline form errors does. And there's the summary message. So yeah, this part is in line with the idea that below the field, what's really up with the field, what was the problem, and the summary on top. Yeah, I think initially I wasn't there when it was decided that we needed something like this summary on the top. But I think because normally you have a page refresh and then you're at the top of the page, and it wouldn't be obvious that there could be errors at the bottom of your page. So then we needed the summary, right? I think something like that. But yeah, for things like this, it's less important. I just think it's a bit ugly or strange. If you see it like this, you have one error on the page and actually there are two. But I think it's not a real problem.
Yeah, it could potentially be confusing to somebody, but I think that they're going to see, the thing that you said, that it says one error, even though there's more than one. But I think that people are in context. Their focus is going to be on the field that they just filled out, right? And this is validating on the fly, right? So
yes.
If I did something, it's validating as I make the entry into the field. So I'm not going to have scrolled away from this. My focus is still going to be here on the field that I'm actually looking at. So I think that that's appropriate. I think that the way that it is right now I don't see any real problem with it.
Well, in custom forms, it would be possible that there are, multiple input fields that are refreshed, of course, if you make some kind of wrapper. But then still, I think it's workable.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we can make this a bit. If you would want to make this better, what do you think it would be nice in a follow-up?
I don't know that you need to have the summary there at all.
Yeah.
I mean, the summary is there for the reason I'm putting the summary is there is because you don't have inline form errors. That's why you have a message up at the top with the summary of all the errors on the page, because you don't have inline form errors. As soon as you have inline form errors, you don't need the summary anymore. It's outlived its usefulness.
Yeah, what I just said is that normally without Ajax, if you submit the form and there's an error completely at the bottom of the page, you wouldn't see instantly there's an error on my page. So therefore, here at the top of the page, I think it's useful to have a summary, and then you can just click it and jump right down to the bottom of the page where your error is. So that's a valid use case, I think.
Yeah, but not next to it. but not right next to it.
Yes, that I agree. So my proposal was to get rid of this thing in the end and then just update the number here or something. That would be better in the future.
I think so.
And then we would need this div always present, because if you say, okay, I didn't have this error before and I upload something here, then I want to generate on client side this error at the top, because we cannot change anything outside the wrapper we change with Ajax. So that was my idea, but I'm glad you also think that's not a big problem anymore. So maybe we can just leave I'll leave a reply about it and ask XGM what she thinks about it, and if we can make it maybe a normal issue again. But yeah,
I don't think it should be blocking anything.
Yeah, and the original issue, maybe we can get it then out of the scope of the let me see, in a place for JavaScript status messages. Maybe we can even get it out of this meta. And then let it live on its own again, because now the question is of people. If I do something with Ajax, I want to have a message pop up or something. Can we have a standard location for that? But I think it's a completely different story.
Right.
Okay. Well, thank you for your input.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
It's definitely much better. That's awesome. It's like, it's now. It's more the way it should be.
Yeah. Well, I think Drupal 8 core is even broken right now for the image field, because what I saw today is that we get this. Currently, if you upload a field and it's a wrong file type, you see the error above it, and then this value should not be null. And I think that's a constraint somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was going to say, what you showed is actually much better than how I remember it looking. So, even though it's still not perfect, it's definitely better off than it was. So
yeah. So let's get this one in.
All right. Why? What's in blocking that? Could you raise that to major instead of normal, so it's got a little bit of visibility?
Of course. I will do that in a moment.
Cool. And then what is? It says it needs work. What is the blocker on that one?
Currently, I need to write extra test.
Okay. All right. Cool.
Yeah. So at one point,
do you know how to do that, or do you need some help with that?
Well, I have a lot of issues on my hand, so it would be really great if people can help here with adding tests, because I've written tests before and functional tests that I'm okay with it, but for this file module in core, the tests are all over the place, and I'm not exactly sure where to place this text, because what we do in this issue, we add an extra wrapper function, so that we have in certain cases we can use the form state, and then we can fix everything nicely. So it's an API change, actually. So we add an extra function. That function is called instead of the old file save upload. So yeah, we had some feedback from Alex, and he proposed this wrapper function. So yeah, if you have any idea how to get this in a bit more quicker, I'm open for ideas.
I think the priority is going to help. I don't know if there's another thing that we use to call out specific issues that are important.
Actually, the interesting thing for inline form errors is I just counted it. 50% of all the open issues are already issues in Drupal core.
Really?
So, yeah, and
that's one of those modules that just finds all the edge cases. Basically.
Yes, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of things are like years old.
Yeah. So I think even all the blockers are almost all are already Drupal core issues. So it would be great if those get fixed anyhow. Yeah, but it's not really usability anymore what we're talking now. So
another thing.
Thank you for listening.
Are you on Drupal Planet at all, Daniel?
Not really.
No. Okay. I'm trying to think. I know that Drupal has an accessibility team. Mike Gifford is the guy who kind of.
Yeah, I'm in contact with him a lot.
You're in contact with him. Okay. Because
Yeah.
I feel like what we might need, given like we've got 2 weeks left-ish to do this work, that maybe a blog post out to Drupal Planet by a Mike or whoever that just kind of.
We did that actually recently. We worked together on a blog
Okay.
post.
See, I don't follow Drupal Planet, so I missed that. Dang, you already thought of that. Curses.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. I think you're doing all the right things, and I definitely see how hard you're working on this. I will say, like, the worst case scenario here, though, is not actually a horrible case scenario. What will happen is if the module isn't ready in time for the year, well, in the case of inline form errors, I actually got more like a year and a half, but the year-long deadline for an experimental module. What would happen is the module would just move wholesale into contrib, and then you would have a lot less problems. Well, actually not, because you're saying most of the problems with the module are actually problems elsewhere in core. So you're still stuck improving the module until core is fixed.
Yeah.
Which is
well, actually, the inline form errors, it's just swapping one service, and it's a really small file. So actually getting this out of core is really difficult.
Yeah, that's funny. So it doesn't actually.
Everything that has been done for this.
Because like most people or most modules, when they're in contrib, it's kind of nice because you get to like just move a lot faster. Like we're doing some work with the JSON API module as part of the API First initiative, and kind of that is in contrib right now, and we're just like, oh my god, we can like commit things when they're ready, and it's amazing. Like,
yeah.
But it sounds like that's not going to help the velocity of this module as much as it does a normal module, because you're blocked in core in a lot of cases.
Yes. Yeah. So actually, it's nice that it's still an experimental thing in core, because then, it emphasizes a bit the problems already in core, and hopefully it gets a bit more weight to get it fixed.
Yeah, as opposed to being a contrib module with 30 users or whatever, it has a little bit less clout that way. So
yeah.
Okay. Well, anyway, so I think the big takeaways there were, so the main meta issue is 2504847. Is that what that number is?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the main meta roadmap for stabilizing inline form errors. The must-have issues, it looks like we're down to 2. That first one is postponed.
Yeah, on the second one, and that is almost done.
The second one we just talked about. So yeah, I think raising that one to major, and then if those of you out here listening are fans of accessibility anyway, it sounds like Daniel would really appreciate the help. Writing tests, testing things, anything else that you can do would be awesome. So,
yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Really appreciate you. And it's nice to quote unquote meet you. So.
We've met before, but you met.
I know, but like not work together, I guess. It's nice to work with you, I should say.
Okay, well, that was it, right, for tonight?
I think so, yeah. I think we'll go ahead and get off the phone. Thanks, everybody. Great meeting, and we'll talk again. Well, some of you will talk again in about 10.5 hours. The rest of you will talk again next week.
Cool.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Goodbye.